He does this thing where people think he's not interested. He wants you to switch off because his shoulders slump and he's walking around on the edge of the area. He is interested. Okay, don't switch off.
Arsenal go to Manchester City this Super Sunday in what people are already billing as a title decider this early in the season. A 0-0 bore draw bored the pants of the entire nation at the end of March, but it felt like a great result for Arsenal at the time. As it turned out, a win at the Etihad would have won them the title. We're joined once again in Tactics Exposed studio by Sun Sports tactical guru Dean Scoggins. Dino, you've got 5 things that both managers have to do to avoid sending the entire nation to sleep like they did at the end of March.
Yeah, and obviously they both want to win. Whether they try and win or whether they're happy with the draw is another thing. But first of all, how do you unpick Arteta's incredible defence? Like we talked about in the North London derby, I'm going to go into this with 3 at the back and chalk on their boots for the wingers, okay? Secondly, Arsenal's box midfield turns into a diamond midfield to free up Arsenal's wingers. Thirdly, David Raya's distribution. Can he bowl that ball out like he's done a few times this season and catch City cold? Don't engage is number 4. Don't engage with City knocking it around at the back and it's like City's rope-a-dope. And finally, the 2 Arsenal superstars at centre-back versus Erling Haaland. How do Man City get Haaland in the game and score that winning goal?
Nice one, Dino. Right, we'll get to those 5 in a minute. Just quickly, though, this game, it feels odd, doesn't it, billing it as a title decider already? And last season, you felt like Arsenal needed to win to really secure their grip on the title. And it was like, oh, well, Man City have still got to go and win all their games, which they obviously did. What do you think the mindset is around this before we get into the tactics?
I think the mindset is very important, is that if it was a score draw or even a ball draw, then both managers will probably take it. What Pep will not take is being tactically outsmarted by Arteta, his old number 2, once again. Because last year, after the game, it was Arteta masterclass, nullifies Man City, does all this, and Pep sat there thinking, I've been done. He will not want that to happen this time.
Right, well, one thing we've noticed from Arsenal this season, you've already said it on plenty of Tactics Exposed episodes this season, is how imperious Arsenal are at the back. They proved that at your beloved Tottenham last week. They're impossible to get through. So it seems odd asking how Man City are going to get through that, especially as they've got Erling Haaland up front. But it will still take some doing.
It will, and obviously Man City are better than Tottenham, first of all. So they will have some better players in those positions to make more things happen. But I think if Pep's bold enough, he has to go 3 at the back. And there's a couple of reasons for this. But first of all, apologies if everyone watched it from start to finish last week, but just to recap on how Arsenal set up. So they're basically a 4-4-2 out of possession where the 2 false 9s or false 10s come in and help out. When they attack, the fullbacks push on, the wingers push on, so they're a 2-4-4 in attack. But defensively, that means they're very compact, no space between the lines, and they allow the centre-backs to almost have possession because they know the centre-backs aren't going to hurt them. Yep. So where Spurs did a good thing last week after half-time was they put wingers right on the touchline. Yep. So I think what Pep's got to do is go 3 at the back, then you go 2 in front of that as your holding midfielders.
As wingers or just
no,
3
at the back, 3 centre-backs, no full-backs, 2 in midfield, then 4 attacking players, including your really, really wide wingers, and 1 up front in Erling Haaland. Right. Okay, so that sounds bold.
So hang on, draw that out for me, because I'm trying to keep up. So you got 3 at the back there.
Let's say Akanji, Diaz, Guardiola, the back 3.
2 in front?
2 in front, which could, to begin with, be Rico Lewis, who on paper is a fullback, but this season a lot has been going back into that inverted fullback position again.
Loads of teams.
Absolutely. So if that becomes Lewis and Rodri in possession, let's say, and then the 4 ahead of that. Now, I'm going to be controversial here, and we'll get to the wingers in a second, but I'm going to say that if he's fit, Savinho plays one side, Doku plays the other side, and then you have Silva and De Bruyne in behind Haaland. Now, Foden not quite fit, obviously would be a great option from the bench. If he's ready to play, perhaps you play Silva out wide and Foden in the middle.
So how does that shape and that setup then, how does that make City particularly dangerous against Arsenal, or why would Arsenal be worried about that?
Well, that's where last week we talked about how Arsenal split the midfield pairing at the base of the midfield because Spurs didn't have anybody in the number 10 position. So if they get Doku right on one wing and Savinho or Silva right on the other wing, it stretches the game out sideways, which inevitably creates spaces in between those lines. And as compact as Arsenal are, if Man City get one or two players in those positions, then that means they get more space in the number 10 position. And look, it's De Bruyne, right? It's someone. It could be Foden. It's Bernardo Silva. They're going to find pockets of space.
Yep.
But what happened last year was that Arsenal were very happy to line up 1v1 all over the place. They didn't allow City overloads anywhere, but they basically man-marked and they went, look, it's a battle. It's Rice against De Bruyne. It's Odegaard against Rodri. It's fullback against winger. But what we saw in that last game last year was that as soon as Pep blinked, Arteta reacted. So Pep brought on Doku in that game, who was very frustrated by Tomiyasu, who was brought on about a minute after Doku came onto the field. So they went 1v1. So this time, to stop that, I think Pep's got to take the risk at the back. What Arteta allowed City to do last year was let Guardiola have the ball at left back. Not a great crosser of the ball.
Yep.
So if he gets it over there and he hits a cross in that's not quick enough, not pacey enough, our centre-backs will deal with it, OK? We don't want that from City
When you
this year.
say our, just establishing you were doing a Mikel Arteta.
Sorry, I was being Mikel Arteta.
All of your Tottenham fans
pulled
got
me
their
up on
head.
that big time, yeah. But no, this time, I would like to think that with Doku and Savinho or whoever it is plays on the right, they're going to run at those Arsenal fullbacks. We don't want to see Jack Grealish coming back inside, or Foden cutting in off the right and coming back inside into a really congested area.
Yep.
Stay on that wing. Harry Redknapp does a column for us, doesn't like really talking about tactics very much. He thinks they're overrated.
Yeah.
But what he basically would say is, chalk on your boots, lads.
Yeah.
Stay on that touchline. And that's a tactic, Harry. Sorry, it's a tactic. Keep your wingers wide so you stay right out there, which creates those pockets of space between centre-back and full-back, which is where we'll get De Bruyne and Foden operating. So wingers and three at the back.
Right, very brave indeed. But then Pep Guardiola, it sort of feels like whatever he does, he does have a tendency, doesn't he, of making quite big tweaks in big games, which he's come unstuck with.
Well, he
likes
to be ahead. He likes to be ahead of the game. And Rodri said in a very recent interview that he did with the Players' Tribune that, he's always thinking one step ahead, what he can do next time.
If he's not on strike, obviously.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And that goes back to what we were talking about before, that Pep will not want. That's a great picture we've seen there. Is it that expression afterwards when Arteta has done him tactically? We will not want him to do that again. So there will be something different we'll see from Man City, I'm sure. Right,
your second point. You do a lot of talking on Tactics Exposed about boxes, diamonds. I'm often struggling to keep up with all these different shapes that you're imagining. What is it that Arsenal are going to do? Box to diamond, you've said. We did a lot of chatting about their midfield ahead of and post that Tottenham match. We appear to be doing it again.
Yeah, and virtually every team in the league creates a box in midfield, because that means if the ball goes in the middle of the box, you've got players around to help out, make challenges, steal the ball in transition, another fashionable phrase where you lose the ball, you win it back straight away.
It was really changing.
Absolutely, and the whole Gegenpress, counter-press tactic of Jurgen Klopp. But most teams create that. Some do it with a fullback, and Arsenal do it slightly differently, where they keep the four at the back and they create that box with two holding midfielders and then the two false 9/false 10s.
So effectively, you mean, if you're looking at football pitch from above, two at the base, which is the corners, two at the top, form a rectangle.
Exactly that.
What are you suggesting then that Arteta should be doing differently against City?
You turn it into a diamond. And they actually did do this last season in this game. And I didn't really sort of make a too big a point of it at the time, because as a Tottenham fan, I was slightly relieved that Arsenal didn't finish this off.
But you didn't want Mikel watching.
No, they were waiting. They weren't just trying to draw the game. They weren't just trying to stifle the life out of it. They did nullify City, but they didn't go there for a 0-0. They went there to say, we're going to keep a clean sheet.
Yeah.
And then if we get our opportunity, we know about them at set pieces. If we get our opportunity, we'll try and take it. And their opportunity came when Odegaard, again, another diamond in midfield. He is their diamond. We're not sure if he's going to play this weekend. And if he doesn't, then it might be Kai Havertz who does this. But they start with the box. And then as they receive the ball, the left-hand player on the box goes slightly forward. So the right-hand player, the defensive one, goes slightly further forward.
Likely Declan Rice?
Likely Declan Rice into that position. then likely Thomas Partey comes into the deeper position,
Yep.
and then one of the other two, be that Havertz or
right
Odegaard,
corner.
comes onto the right, and then one goes into this sort of 10
Number
position.
10, yeah.
And what they then create is this triangle or diamond, but a triangle is the front of the diamond, obviously, to play a two-man pass round City's press.
Yeah.
Then you've got Odegaard, as it was last year, could be Havertz this year, in a position where he can receive the ball and then play it in those channels to the wingers.
Yeah.
Okay? They got the winger away. I think it was Martinelli, may have been Trossard, who, if he'd have crossed it first time, they probably got a shot on goal and a very, very... And that was the plan. That was the plan. Stay tight, stay compact as a box. When City press us, can we change that box into a diamond, get somebody in the number 10 role around the halfway line, and get those wingers into the space that City do leave.
Yeah.
City leave that big amount of space behind. So the wingers for Arsenal are not just important as defensive players, they're going to be their out ball.
Yeah,
and obviously Man City's wingers, being what I talked about with three at the back and high wingers, they're going to have a big job as well, getting back if Man City aren't playing with fullbacks.
Yeah, wide men, particularly important this season. So what you're effectively saying, but a brief summary of that is rectangle when you haven't got the ball, when you have, quick switch to the diamond, depending what side the ball.
And a man who can take the ball on the half turn. And that is, Odegaard's a genius at it. And Havertz can absolutely do that as well.
Of course, right. David Raya's quick distribution you've got here. We know, we've covered it on Tactics Exposed before, that goalkeepers nowadays are just as important, if not more important, as is often the case with Onana at Man United. It's more important what they're like with their feet than whether they can actually block the balls from going into the net. Ederson and Alisson have been the yardstick against which all modern-day goalkeepers are measured in the Premier League in recent times. David Raya was brought in and ousted popular Aaron Ramsdale at the time, and after a bit of a slow start, has really improved Arsenal, and you wouldn't have anyone else. Talk to me about distribution and why that's going to be particularly important.
Yeah, and it will actually be his distribution with his hands that I think that we should notice. And thanks for a couple of guys on the comments this week who actually pointed that out against Spurs. Now, we did touch on that very, very quickly, where there was a bowl out from Raya, which freed Martinelli, and Bentancur was very fast in a race. And I've actually looked back, and they're doing this a lot. Right. So this is a definite ploy.
So what are we talking here?
So we're talking ball in hand rather than ball on the ground. Yeah. So they defend crosses so well, Arsenal. They get into a position, obviously, when they've got Gabriel and Saliba as the two centre-backs, and they leave this space where if they're not getting there, Raya's coming to collect it. Yeah. So Raya comes. And when you play against a team like Man City, and very much like Spurs did last week, they push up, they push up, they push up. They're trying to find that pass. Up they come. The centre-back joins in. Another full-back joins in. And all of a sudden, you create these really big rectangle spaces where you would deem a traditional right-back or left-back to be.
Right.
So if Raya catches it, he's not even thinking. He's not thinking, is there somebody there? He's not having a look to check if there's someone there. He's catching it and he's throwing it out as fast as he can. His throw out is launching it into the inside channels to where the wingers can run. Yeah. If they're not there, it's their fault, not his.
Who's he looking to find?
He's looking there for Saka one side or Martinelli the other.
Straight to the wingers.
Straight to them. Nobody in between, direct. Arsenal are quite direct from goal kicks and from Raya, which is another reason they want to
be set piece kings, direct long ball football. They've really
gone back to more George Graham than they have Arsene Wenger here.
Yeah.
But no, and it's really dangerous, because if you're sucked in as a team because you're trying to break Arsenal down, you have to commit more players to an attack. And then if somebody doesn't hit a great cross, Tottenham must have hit 20 bad crosses last weekend. The goalkeeper collects a few. And if your wingers are, A, got enough energy still from their defensive duties, but B, awake enough to get away, it's a really, really dangerous ploy. And he throws it out like Peter Schmeichel. Schmeichel was the first goalkeeper in the Premier League to do it this way. And all of a sudden, he's throwing it to Giggs one side and Beckham the other. And it's like, oh, no, we're done. Raya's doing it. And he throws it almost into the ground. So it skids and becomes a pass. And he's huge, huge shoulders, huge hands, and it's really, really dangerous. So that will be a ploy on the counter-attack that City are going to have to be very wary of, and it's very different to Ederson's distribution.
Yeah. How so? Well,
Ederson's is with his feet, and also Arsenal won't press. So Ederson, in possession, will play like a centre-back. So if they do start with three at the back, which, again, I think they should... wouldn't dream of telling Pep what to do.
No, I wouldn't if I was you,
yeah,
to be honest.
absolutely. Yeah, show us your medals, lads. Yeah,
Yeah, I know you're Sun Sports tactical guru. I do think Pep Guardiola's got the edge on him.
A little bit, yeah. But let's hope he does this to make an exciting game at the weekend. But what then happens if you play the three at the back and Rico Lewis goes into midfield? Then Ederson, Chelsea do this as well. Maresca likes his centre-back, again, another disciple of Pep, likes his goalkeeper to come into almost a centre-back position when they've got the ball, because they trust him on the ball so much that that's where you create the overload.
Yep.
Because then, the centre-right back, centre-back, goalkeeper, left-back, then they move the ball along and Arsenal cannot, or whoever they're playing, cannot go out to press everybody. Yep. And if then you leave the ball with the goalkeeper and someone's out of position, Ederson can fire that ball in. And he did it to Brentford.
And your overlaps already started.
Brentford were in a really good position to defend a short pass and a play out. And Ederson looks up, goes, Erling Haaland.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
Honestly,
and there we go, over the top.
We said that on the last episode of Tactics Exposed, didn't we? That's the most Sunday League goal I've ever seen scored by the best
joyous.
team.
Joyous,
indeed. Yeah. Right, number 4, don't engage City. It's rope-a-dope.
Yeah, so rope-a-dope meaning Muhammad Ali style. You tire somebody out, stay on the ropes, and no, they never
let them swing at you.
Absolutely, they're never really hitting you. You're not really, and then all of a sudden, when they're at their weakest, then bang,
you're exhausted.
Yeah, so City do it a lot. They move the ball around so quickly in triangles around left back and left wing and centre midfielder. We see Rodri, all the touches on midfield. Bounce passes, which is very important, where we think...
Is that, in the old days, would that have just been called a one-touch pass?
Yeah, it would have done. But the purpose of it is not just to retain possession. It's because if Rodri plays the ball in between two midfield players to one of his own players and they then wait and pass it back, what's happening is they're waiting for somebody to come out of position. And
draw you out,
and then you play around. So Arsenal last year brilliantly didn't fall for it for a start. And what they did, and Pep was jumping up and down and histrionics on the touchline because they were passing it between themselves and Arsenal were not coming out.
Yep.
So instead of going to press somebody, Havertz and Odegaard last year, come in and sit on the two Man City pivots, the two holding midfield players, not behind them, in front of them. So there's no ball to be played into their feet. And then you're still set up with two banks of 4 behind that against what is actually 6 players because City have still got the 4 at the back. Yep. So it's so difficult to break down. And again, Arsenal don't need us to say this. Arsenal will do this again. Yeah. They will absolutely do this again at the weekend. They will not be drawn out by Man City. And if they are, it'll be Arteta throwing his hands around on the touchline, telling off Trossard, Havertz, Odegaard, whoever it is, to not go out of the line. So that's where, again, I think City's 3 at the back instead of 4 gives you an extra midfield player that can make that penetrative pass.
We've done Erling Haaland. How do you stop him on Tactics Exposed before, Dino? It was an exact science and took an awful lot of effort. 9 goals in 4 Premier League games so far this season. It seems that either teams aren't watching or it is just very, very difficult to do. But as we've said already, Arsenal's defence imperious, particularly because of Gabriel and William Saliba. You've labelled them the best centre-back pairing in the league, maybe even the world at the moment, who knows. How do Manchester City ensure that they get the very best out of Haaland in what is likely to be his biggest test of the season?
It is, yeah, and we say 9 in 4. It's all very well on paper saying how you can stop someone, but actually doing it is another
It does
matter.
make for a good YouTube video.
Oh, it does, absolutely.
Yeah.
And then start hitting him in the air a little bit more is one thing I would say. And let's say Gabriel and Saliba will do that.
Yeah. Worth going back to watch that. If you haven't already, go back on the Tactics Exposed playlist on Sun Sports YouTube and watch the How Do You Stop Erling Haaland video. Anyway, Dino, carry on.
Absolutely. And so, he scored 9 in 4, but he hasn't played these 2 yet.
Yeah.
So, and it will be 2v1 a lot. Because of how we said Arsenal set up in defence, they leave a player to have the ball. They did it with Guardiola against City last year. With Spurs, they let the 2 centre-backs have it, which creates 1 extra player at least, where you
When
can
you're
have
defending.
2v1 when you're defending.
Yeah, yeah, cool.
Absolutely. When you're defending against Haaland especially, you want to be 2v1. You don't want to be 1v1.
At least 2v1.
Yeah. And look, they will give it a good go 1v1 between them. You know, they're not going to be shy of, you know, again, those crosses coming in and hitting him in those spaces. But the key to it is how are they going to find Haaland is more to the point.
Yeah.
Because he does this thing where people think he's not interested. He is interested. Okay? Don't switch off.
Yeah.
He wants you to switch off because his shoulders slump and he's walking around on the edge of the area and he feels
Looking
like
a
he's
bit
only had a couple
sulky
of
and a bit
touches.
grumpy,
And
yeah.
you know, and then on the TV they'll flag up he's only had 6 touches this half. Well, sorry, but touches 7, 8 and 9 might go in the back of the
10
net.
minutes
if you
later he's
switch
got a
off.
hat-trick.
Yeah, so it's how you find him. And one thing, again, that we highlighted in the North London derby was there was a very clever change by Ange Postecoglou at the half-time break where he put the wingers really wide and that created those inside pockets of space on the corners of the penalty area. The underlap area, yeah, exactly. And what Spurs obviously didn't do very well was A, capitalise, and then they conceded down the other end, and Arsenal went to 6 at the back, which stopped that. But City at the start will desperately try and do this. And I would imagine what we will see is De Bruyne be more inside left and Silva or Foden be more inside right. And that means that we can get in-swinging crosses.
Yeah.
And what Haaland does when he prowls around on the edge of the penalty area is he's not wanting the centre-backs to go in the box.
Yeah.
Because if all of a sudden they're defending on the penalty area line, he doesn't get a run on them.
No, and that's where he
the
scores a lot of his goals.
Yeah, and absolutely. And the goalkeeper's then going to come out as well. We just talked about how good Raya is with crosses. The goalkeeper's going to come out to those balls and the defenders are going to go back. So the area of space for him to work in is very difficult. Yeah. He's very happy when a team's defending on the edge of the box or in the edge of the D. Yeah. So he creates that space in behind.
That explosive burst.
Exactly. And he'll almost look lazy and he'll wander about and then he'll move to a position where here it comes.
Yeah,
here
as soon
comes
as the ball's
that.
hit.
Exactly.
Bang.
And he'll peel off the back, and that's what they'll be looking for. And again, because we talked about chalk on the boots for the wingers, they stay wide. They're also staying wide in a sense where they can beat their man one-on-one.
Yeah,
but they're actually absolutely. But what they're doing there is also not allowing Arsenal to stay compact and stay narrow and mean that sometimes they might have 4 defenders against Haaland, let alone 2. So they want to be dragged out wide. And also, if they do beat their man, they can then whip the cross in and Haaland's still got time to get there. Yeah. So that, to me, is how you find him. He won't get involved too much on balls into feet. Dominic Solanke for Spurs last weekend, balls into feet, getting hit by Saliba and Gabriel, did a very good job physically. Haaland can do that, but in this match, he'll stay out of those physical duels. Look, if we see him running in behind or an early cross that finds him because Arsenal are out of position, I would imagine because that's come from an Arsenal mistake, or Arsenal have gone 1-0 down and then they're chasing the game. But they've got to get the ball in those inside pockets to find that ball to the back post to Haaland.
Dino, another joyous episode of Tactics Exposed. Just one thing, we build this at the beginning. This is 5 things that the managers need to do to avoid a total stalemate. Am I correct in saying that actually, if they do all of these things, we could see an absolute tactical head-to-head again, which could result in the 2 teams cancelling each other out?
It could. And last year, every time one of them made a change, the other one made a change. When Pep moved De Bruyne in to be like an old-fashioned number 10, playing as like a second striker off Haaland, then Arsenal moved Partey in there and Rice went and put somebody else up. When then De Bruyne started to drift out to the inside right position, Rice came and picked him up and played on that channel. And it was like tit for tat. You know, it was the 2 of them having to go at each other on the touchline and who's going to go next, mate? You go, I'll change something, you go. And they reacted to each other. But City have got a couple of, you know, special players who are different. And that's why, I mean, I really like Savinho. I think we're going to see a lot more from him this year. Yeah. Out and out winger down that side, out and out winger in Doku on the other side. And hopefully we'll see some fireworks rather than a just damp squib.